Okay, let's talk about some long division. So what we have here is a long division problem, 750 divided by 6. Whenever looking at a long division problem, you start with the digit the furthest to the right in the dividend, or the number that is being divided by. So in this case, that number is 7. So we're going to compare the 6, which is our divisor, or the number that is you're dividing by, to that first digit of the dividend, which is 7. And the question we're going to ask is the divisor, or 6, less than the first digit of the dividend, in this case 7? And in this case, the answer is yes. So then we will next ask, how many times will 6 go into 7? So we'll pull up 7 dots, and we'll see how many times we can color sets of 6. So we color 6 of our dots black, and we don't have enough red dots left over to do another set. So the answer to the question is 6 will go into 7 one time. So we'll take our answer of 1 and we'll put it back into our division problem. But we need to put it in the correct spot. In this case, the correct spot will be right above the 7, because you have to keep your numbers lined up to where you're working. So let me explain to you why we have to put it in that particular spot. Every position in a number has a value. So the position closest to the, or furthest to the right, would be our 1s. The next column over would be our 10s, and the next column over would be our 100s. So in the case of the number that we're looking at, which is 750, you're looking and you see that 0 in the 1s column times 1 is 0. 5 in the 10s column is 5 times 10, which is 50. And then 7 in the 100s column would be 7 times 100, or 700, which makes up 700 plus 50 plus 0, which is 750. So what I'm getting at is that the 7 isn't really a 7, it is actually a 700. And we're dividing that 700 by 6, which means that that 1 has to be in the 100 spot, because 700 divided by 6 is actually 100. That's why we have to make it sure it's in the right spot, because that 1 has to be in the hundreds column, because it really represents a 100. So let's continue. So after you've divided 6 into 7 to start off with, the next step we need to do is multiply the first number of our quotient, which is the answer to a division problem, by our divisor, or the number you're dividing by. So in this case, we are taking our quotient of 1 and we're multiplying it by 6, our divider, and we get 6. Then we take the answer to that problem and we put it underneath the 7, which is where we've been working at. We're still working in that column. The next, what we're going to do is we're going to subtract that 6 from the 7 above it, which will give us a 1. So to read this as far as we've gone so far, because we're keeping everything in the same column, we've said that 700, because the 7 is in the 100 spot, subtracting 600, because the 6 is in the 100 spots, equals 100, because the 1 is in the 100 spot. So that's where we are. So now we need to continue our division. So in order to continue our division, we're going to bring down the number in our tens position, and that's our 5. So we go ahead and we'll bring that straight down. So now we have a 15. So what we need to do now is divide 15 by 6 to see how many times the 6 will go into the 15. So let's get our dots back, and we'll see how many times we can change the color of 6 of them. So the first 6 we change to black, and then we change the next 6 to white, which leaves with 3 reds, which means we don't have enough to do a third set. So the answer to the problem of 15 divided by 6, or how many times will 6 go into 15, is 2. So once again, we got to make sure we put it in the right column, because now we're dealing with the tens column. Move the 2 over there in the tens column. Then our next step is to multiply our answer of 2 by the divisor of 6. And 2 times 6 will equal 12. Now we need to move that 12 underneath the 15 so that we can subtract it. And we'll go ahead and subtract. And 15 minus 12 is 3. And now we're ready to pull down our last digit, the digit from the ones position, which is the 0. Bring it straight down, which gives us a 30. So now what we're going to look at is we're going to see how many times the 6, which is our divisor, will go into the 30. So let's bring up our 30 dots, and we'll see how many times we can change the color of packs of 6 of them. So we got it once, it goes into it twice, 3 times, 4 times, and 5 times. So 6 went into 30 5 times. So we'll go ahead and put our 5 in the right position. And 6 times 5 is 30. And because that's our last digit and it's a even number, when you subtract 30 from 30, you're at 0. That means our final answer is going to be 125. So let's go ahead and look at another problem. This one's going to present a couple more issues. So let's go ahead and we'll get started. So like last time, we're going to look at the first digit. But this time you'll notice that our divisor is actually bigger than the first digit of our dividend. So we can't divide. You can't put 8 into 1 because 8 is a bigger number. So what you're going to need to do is look at the first 2 digits this time of the dividend. And we can see now that 8 is smaller than 10, so we can go ahead and we can work with that. So 10 divided by 8 is 1, because 8 will go into 10 one time, but not twice. So we'll go ahead and put our 1 in the correct spot now. We need to be careful that even though we're using both the digit in the hundreds and the 10 spot, we're going to put it over the number with the least value or the furthest to the right of the number we're working with. So the furthest digit to the right of the 10 is the 0, so we put it right above that. And now we'll multiply 8 times 1, which gives us 8. And then we'll put the 8 right underneath the 0 of the 10. And then we'll subtract. 10 minus 8 is 2. Now we need to bring down our next digit. So we'll bring down the 8 to make it 28. And so then we need to figure out how many times 8 will go into 28. And I know it goes in 3 times. So we'll multiply then the 3 times the 8, which gives us 24. We subtract the 24 from the 28, gives us 4. Now this is where we run into a slight problem. As you can see, we have 4 left over, but we've ran out of numbers to bring down. Now, in the past, you may have just said remainder 4, but with long division, we're going to use decimals instead of remainders. So, in order to explain this, we're going to use money. So, when I tell you have $1, you could write it like this, $1. Or you could write it like this, which is $1 and no cents. So whether or not you write it with the zeros expressing that there are no cents added to the dollar, or if you just write it as $1, they're both $1. They're equal. The reason is that when you have a decimal point, adding zeros to the right of the decimal point does not change the value of that number. So if I have a number of 56 and I put my decimal point after it and then add 2 zeros, it's still 56. If I add 16 zeros after it, it's still 56. If I add all kinds of zeros behind it, the value is still 56. So we can add zeros behind a number, behind a decimal point on a number, and not change the value. So if we take our decimal point and we put it up in our behind our dividend, we can add a zero behind it and not change the value. Even with that decimal point and a zero after it, it's still 108, which then allows us to bring down that zero and give us a bigger number to divide by. Now what you need to remember is if you put that decimal point in your dividend, or the number you're dividing, you need to move the decimal point into the exact same spot in your quotient, or the answer. So now we need to know how many times 8 will go into 40. And I know that 8 goes into 45 times. So then I multiply my 5 times my 8, and I get a 40. I subtract the 40 from the 40, and I get a 0, which means we're done, and our answer is 13.5. So let me show you a little trick to remembering how to do this. You just need to remember, does McDonald's serve burgers? So let's look at a long division problem, and I'll show you what does McDonald's serve burgers means. We start off with the does, meaning division. So in our long division problem, we see that we're dividing. We divide the first digit of the dividend by the divisor, and that's 3 divided by 3 gives us a 1. We put the 1 up in the quotient. McDonald's means multiply. That means you're multiplying the 1 in the quotient by the dividend of 3, which gives you a 3, and you place that underneath the 3 in the dividend, and you subtract, which is what serve was, and when you subtract them out, you get a 0, and then B is for bring down, which you bring down the next digit. Then you go up and you repeat the whole process again with division, multiplication, subtraction, and bring down the next number. And we repeat one more time. Division, multiplication, subtraction. And since we're at the end and I've run out of room on the bottom of my screen, we'll just stop there because the answer is 124. Hopefully this was helpful, and you enjoy.